everyone. So today we're going to be talking about some of the manga I've read in the past few months. So we're basically doing my Q2 wrap up, and surprisingly, I enjoyed almost everything I've read in the past 3 months, and I'm very happy about that. As much as I really like to talk about things I dislike, I do also prefer it when I enjoy my reading experience. Shocker. So I have plenty of thoughts to share about all of these series, so let's go ahead and get started with Tokyo Revengers. So in this manga, we follow Hanagaki Takemichi, and he's about 26 years old, and one day he's watching the news, and he finds out that his girlfriend, or the girlfriend that he had when he was in high school, dies as a result of seemingly gang violence, and through various circumstances, he ends up going back 12 years in the past to hopefully save her life. So this manga is a great example of everything I enjoy about typical or stereotypical shonen manga. We have really high stakes action with characters that you really love, and that makes the action more impactful. We also really focus on the importance of friendship here, which yes, might sound a little cheesy, but I love it. And even though this manga is about a guy trying to save his girlfriend, there is a lot of focus on friendship and platonic relationships. We really get to know a lot of the characters in this gang, and the fact that the series is pretty long gives us a lot of time to focus on each of the characters and give them good backstories and compelling character development. So when you get to those parts of the story where these characters are in danger, you really are on the edge of your seat because you want them to be okay, which of course should be a thing for all manga, but I especially love it in shonen manga. If you put all those aspects together, chances are I'm going to enjoy the series, even if it does have some flaws, which the series definitely does. Also, our main character Takemichi is kind of, again, stereotypical. He's pretty weak and not very good at fighting, even though he tries to be in a gang. But he's really sick of running away, so he tries his best to never give up and keep fighting, even if he is weaker than most of the people around him, and also he has a heart of gold. So I love those characters. So while I did enjoy this for the most part, I do have some pretty big issues with it. Number one, the antagonists. The antagonists of a story are usually never my favorite aspects of a manga, but the motivations for the antagonists in this manga are really, really stupid. And I can excuse a little bit of it because they're teenagers, so it's just teenagers being silly and having the wrong priorities, I guess. But there's one character in particular where you wait volumes and volumes and volumes for the reveal of why he's doing the things he's doing, and then we get that reveal and it's just the dumbest thing I've ever heard. Not to say it's unrealistic, not to say that this doesn't happen in real life, but just the fact that we waited so long for that, it was really disappointing. And there's another antagonist I can think of. His motivation was also just really stupid. So that's definitely not a strong point of the series. And before I read this, I heard that the ending, or the last arc in particular, was really horrible and kind of ruined the series, and I definitely don't agree with that. I do think the last arc is by far the weakest arc in terms of just writing ability. There are ridiculous situations happening just in an instant, like they're there, they come out of nowhere, and then they're gone or resolved just as quickly with no impact on the characters or the overall story or anything. Just seems like, let's add this exciting moment just to add a cliffhanger in a chapter and then we'll resolve it very quickly. It just doesn't seem well thought out. Also, some decisions that were made earlier in the series are kind of undermined. Some characters are the writing choices for the characters just doesn't seem necessary. It seems kind of silly. You're kind of writing too much. Like, it definitely should have ended earlier and kind of wrapped up different storylines better, because the fact that they added another arc did kind of disrupt some of the things that were resolved before. But at the end of the day, I did love the characters. I really enjoyed their relationships, especially the platonic ones. The friendships that were built in here were really great to read, and I did enjoy my time. So this is one that will be staying in my collection. I plan on reading the spin-off series, the Keisuke Baji one. I don't like it enough to read any of the other spin-offs. I think there's like a comedy one. I don't care about that. And then I don't like it enough to buy the full color editions, although they do look very nice, but I already own the whole series like this. So I'm fine with this, but I did enjoy it despite its flaws. So yeah. So next I read all of Basara, and I talked about this very briefly in a previous video a couple months ago. And at that point, I'd read the first volume, I enjoyed it, and I had just a couple thoughts about the art, but that's basically all I talked about. And since then, like I said, I've read the entire thing, so I have many thoughts about this. Basically, we follow a young girl named Sarasa. She is a twin, and her twin brother is said to be the child of destiny, destined to save her village and maybe even the world from this evil king who rules over all of Japan. This takes place in a future, about 300 years in the future at least, where it's after some apocalypse has destroyed at least Japan. Japan is mostly a desert, and so basically they live under tyrannical rule, and her brother is destined to defeat the king, save the village somehow. But one day their village is attacked by the Red King, who is the son of the main king, or one of the sons, and he kills Sarasa's twin brother. So because of this, Sarasa basically feels like she has to take on the identity of her brother Tatara to become the child of destiny and save her village and maybe even all of Japan. The first thing I want to talk about is a mini criticism I had at the beginning, which was the art. I do think the art at the beginning is not amazing, and maybe it is just the files I read on the Viz app, maybe it's something else, but the lines are very thin, so it's kind of hard to figure out what's going on. But definitely as the story progresses, the art gets much better, more beautiful, easier to read for sure. So by the end, I definitely had an appreciation for the art, and that happens pretty quickly, so it's not really a criticism. There's a lot going on in this manga. It's quite long, so I have lots of different aspects of this series I want to talk about. I'm not sure if I have enough time to do so, but I will do my best. So one, this series has brought up an interesting discussion of revenge and the cycle of violence that can happen because of that. So obviously Sarasa / Tatara wants to get revenge on the Red King for killing her brother, destroying her village. In order to do this, she believes that she needs to kill certain people to get her revenge. But then the question comes up, well, if you kill somebody, then someone who is close to them will want revenge on you, so there's a cycle of violence, and is Sarasa even justified in killing these people because they killed someone that she loves? And if she does kill somebody and then they want revenge on her, are they justified in trying to hurt her because they indirectly or directly hurt them? There's also this interesting aspect of identity explored here, because some of the villagers don't even know that she is Sarasa and that she's not Tatara. They think that Sarasa died and she is Tatara, as well as the fact that she had no expectations for her life. She was just kind of forgotten about, discarded as this extra child who just happened to be the sibling of the child of destiny. But now she has this huge image to uphold, and that actually interferes with her own identity, and she's trying to figure out what parts of her are her and what parts of her are this image that she needs to uphold to hopefully save her family and the people she cares about. I think Sarasa is a fantastic main character. She is really trying her best in this really impossible situation, and I also like that she shows weakness, and I think the fact that this is a shoujo manga helps with this. Sometimes in, not just manga, but in many stories, you have a character, a female character especially, who's supposed to be badass, and she is not allowed to show emotions. That is not the case in this manga. Sarasa is very young. She's dealing with a lot of really difficult things happening, and that affects her emotionally, of course. And this manga is not afraid to explore how sometimes she kind of feels like she needs to give up because of this impossible thing that's happening. She is not capable of dealing with some situations, and she has to lean on the people around her. Thankfully, there's a fantastic supporting cast. I love all of the characters that surround Sarasa. She kind of gets like, you know, in Yona of the Dawn, when you have Yona gathering people to go on her quest, that's basically what's happening in Basara as well. I feel like the first half of the manga is kind of focusing on that aspect, the adventure aspect, the gathering crew members aspect, and then later we get more high stakes. I mean, the entire story is quite dark. The stakes are quite high, but the second part is when we get kind of the higher, more political things going on. So because of this, I think I did enjoy the first part a little bit better, and maybe because we're building up to this inevitable scene. Maybe that's why I enjoyed the first half. The second half is still very good. It's just the fact that the stakes are higher. We're introduced to like different characters who have some political discussions, and there's just a lot of moving parts that need to be focused on. And it's not a flaw of the story. Of course, you need those aspects in order to tell the story. I just preferred the whole gathering crew members and conflicts there rather than the bigger political conflict. Like while I was reading that, I found myself just a little bit missing the part where we were focusing on Sarasa and her little found family. So there's one huge aspect of this manga that I haven't touched on yet, and I'm not sure if this is a spoiler. It happens in the first volume, but it's not in the synopsis at all. So I left this till last, so if you really don't want to know anything about anything that could maybe be considered a spoiler, then you can go ahead and skip ahead. Again, I don't think this is actually a spoiler because it happens in the first volume, but it is kind of an interesting reveal. So I'll talk about it now. Basically, the Red King, the guy who came and destroyed Sarasa's village and killed her twin brother, Sarasa ends up meeting him in like this sauna hot springs thing. And she kind of falls in love with him. He doesn't know that she is Tatara. He only sees her as Sarasa. And they only meet each other in like these hot spring situations. They never consider why. They keep meeting each other coincidentally in these different areas where Tatara and the Red King are conflicting. But they do end up meeting each other and continuously, and they fall for each other and are basically relying on each other emotionally when they are dealing with these really heavy aspects of their life, but they don't know that they're enemies. So this adds a huge layer of tension, especially to the first half of the manga, when you're just waiting for them to realize that they are bitter enemies. So this is really the only way you're gonna get me to think that a romance storyline is compelling, when you have all these secrets, just this dramatic irony that the audience knows what's happening and is waiting for the reveal, but the characters don't know that they are bitter enemies. So I love that. Also, this manga is so dark. It's very, very dark. It is not afraid to explore some very serious topics. Many trigger warnings are involved here, like any dark thing you think could happen in a post-apocalyptic manga with huge political feuds and characters hurting each other, sometimes out of necessity, sometimes out of their own gain. It's very, very dark, and I actually appreciate that about this manga. It is not afraid to go there, but please be aware. If you are sensitive to any kind of violence against children especially, that's a big part of this manga, and it is not shy about it. But also just in general, the story is quite violent. I honestly think some people who like really enjoy seinen manga because of how brutal they are would enjoy Basara, but I think it explores and includes this content pretty well, and it makes the story entirely more impactful. So I really enjoyed it. I will say the final 2 volumes in the series, there are 27 volumes I believe, the final 2 are just like short stories in the world focusing on a couple different characters. I don't think those last 2 volumes are necessary to read. I didn't actually really like them. The actual ending of the manga though was satisfying, and overall just a fantastic story. I'm so glad I enjoyed this. And I really hope that Viz ends up releasing this in omnibuses like they have for Red River. I will definitely add it to my collection if they do so. Sorry, I kind of feel like my thoughts were all over the place for this, but there's just so much I wanted to talk about with this series. I'm still not even entirely sure that I was able to get all my thoughts across, but I really enjoyed this manga. Next up, I read all 7 volumes of Tokyo Babylon, and in this manga, we follow our main character named Subaru. He's kind of a spirit detective guy. He goes around investigating different spiritual activity in Tokyo. Sometimes it's people requesting his assistance, and sometimes he just hears about it. And it's not like, I called it spirit detective. It's not really like a ghost hunter thing. It's just like someone who puts spirits to rest. He's kind of an exorcist, basically. So it starts out quite episodic in nature because of this. Basically, Subaru going around helping people and spirits, and these stories focus a lot on different societal issues, including bullying, neglect, abuse. So again, quite dark subject material. As the story continues, however, we start to see a bigger picture and realize that things are not quite as they seem with everything here. Also in this manga, we have a couple other characters. So Subaru has a twin sister who we see a little bit. She is not an exorcist, but she does hang out with Subaru, supports him a lot. And also we have Seishiro, who is a veterinarian, and he hangs out with these two for some reason. He is 25 years old, and these two are 16 years old. And I want to give a content warning because he is, like I said, 25, they're 16. He hangs out with them all the time, and he is constantly professing his love to Subaru. So yeah, definitely an uncomfortable relationship dynamic there. And I want to point it out because even though I did enjoy this manga for the most part, that is a content warning that's important. So I did enjoy the societal commentary of this manga. I thought the second half of the manga was stronger than the first half, but I will say that this manga, it doesn't feel unfinished, but it definitely has an open ending. The conflict is not entirely resolved, and I can see why, because this is definitely a prequel to Clamp's other series, X 1999, but some people might be left unsatisfied because this does feel kind of unfinished, so I want to mention that. But I did enjoy my time with this. I am also enjoying my time with X 1999. I do enjoy this kind of dark shoujo corner I found myself in, exploring these older shoujo manga and the very serious topics they explore. I'm enjoying that a lot. So I did enjoy this. Definitely has some flaws though, but I will also share my thoughts on X 1999 when I'm done with that. Next up, I read all 6 volumes of Sketchy. This manga focuses on a bunch of different women and their experiences with skateboarding, whether they've been doing it for a long time or they're first getting into the hobby. So several of the characters get a focus in the story, but I would say our main character is on the front here. Her name is Akko. She's 31. She works kind of a dead-end job in a video rental store, and she's in a dead-end relationship with a boyfriend who, they're not really toxic, but they just don't really have any expectations for the relationship. To me, they seem like they're just kind of together just out of convenience, I suppose. And she doesn't really have any aspirations for her life. She's just kind of going with the flow, I guess. She has a group of friends from high school that she hangs out with, but they all seem to have their lives together, so she kind of feels like an outcast there as well. But one day she sees a group of young women skateboarding, and she becomes interested in the sport and decides to try skateboarding herself. So because she gets, to me, the most focus, I did enjoy her story the most. We see a lot of her exploration of the fact that she has no desire to do anything with her life. Her feelings about her lack of success and comparing herself to others, I really thought all of that was very relatable. So seeing her meet this great group of friends and find a sport that she's very passionate about was really great to read. I thought this manga did a really good job portraying all the people involved in skateboarding. Is very welcoming. There's really no gatekeeping happening at all here, and while I'm sure gatekeeping does happen in any community, the fact that it's not present here was really nice to read, because the focus is not on tension in the skateboarding community. The focus was on tension in these characters' personal lives and how they use skateboarding to feel better, to find something that they enjoy. All the characters who were already familiar and experienced with skateboarding are very happy to share their knowledge with the newcomers, and so I found that really great to read. Unfortunately, I will say that, like many shorter series like this, I think the cast was just too ambitious. There's too many characters introduced, and the mangaka is just not able to focus on all the characters and provide all of them with a compelling storyline that gets wrapped up properly. So it kind of feels unbalanced because you have a couple characters like Akko, where you get to their story, their backstory, you see them in their first interactions with skateboarding, and they might get some flashback chapters, some emotional chapters, whatever. You have them, but then you also have a couple characters who are introduced. Like there's 2 high school characters I can think of, and you see their introduction chapters and maybe one other chapter, but other than that, they really don't get very much character development. And that was kind of unfortunate because I thought their storylines were really compelling. I would have liked to explore those more, but it is a kind of short series, so you don't get enough of that. I do think though that there was room to explore those characters more. There's a lot of time spent on explaining technical aspects of skateboarding that I don't think are necessary for a story like this. Like, yes, you have the characters who are learning about this for the first time, so maybe the mangaka feels like they need to explain this to the reader as well, but I just didn't feel like it was necessary, and it just didn't seem like a good trade-off between that and character development for me. Overall though, I definitely enjoyed this manga. I really like focusing on adult characters and adult issues, which this manga definitely does, despite the fact that there are some younger characters. Of course, it's a sports manga, so I like that about it, but this is not like a typical sports manga that I enjoy with competitions and stuff like that. It's just focusing on the characters. It's more of a character drama than a sports manga, really. But there are very, very few sports manga that focus on female characters, so I will take any of that I can get. And of course, again, it's a story that focuses on friendship, so I was going to enjoy it no matter what. So yeah, highly recommend this if you're looking for like a character drama story. And lastly, I read something very different from everything else, kind of silly. That was The Vampire and His Pleasant Companions. I read all 6 volumes that are out right now. So in this manga, we follow Albert. He is a young vampire, kind of recently turned, just a couple years he's been a vampire. And basically during the day, he is a bat. He's in bat form. I wish I could show you a picture of what he looks like. Actually, let me find it. So here you go. Here's him in his bat form. So basically during the day, he's a bat. At night, he turns into a human. And he is from Nebraska, and he spends his time as a bat in like this meat processing plant to eat the blood. But one day he ends up frozen in like this meat shipment, and he ends up getting shipped to Japan, where he thaws out, and now he's in trouble because he's in Japan. He doesn't know the language. He can't speak Japanese. He has no possessions, including clothing. And so he basically has to rely on some people to help him out of the situation. As you can probably tell, this manga is very, very funny. Between the inconvenient shape-shifting, the miscommunication that happens with this language barrier, just the fact that he's a vampire and he has to hide that identity and just ends up being inconvenient for him and others. Also, Albert himself is kind of funny. For me, the stereotypical image of a vampire is kind of broody and dark. Honestly, when I saw this cover and the other covers, I thought this guy was the vampire because he looks more stereotypical vampire, but no, this is Albert. He's very goofy, and maybe it's because he's only been a vampire for a couple years, but he's kind of like a golden retriever. He's very silly, he's very kind-hearted, and I really appreciate that about him, but it adds to the overall silliness of this manga. However, this manga also does have some serious moments. The vampire angst, if I can call it that, is there. Albert obviously needs to drink blood, but because he's such a young vampire, he does not drink human blood. He is not comfortable with it, and so he really tries to avoid it, but he gets himself injured a lot. So that creates tension and conflicting feelings for Albert and the people around him, and also the fact that he has to hide his identity as a vampire. So all of that is great, and there's also this mystery element throughout here. So Albert ends up like using his vampire powers, turning into a bat to help investigate some mysteries. There's some like murder mystery, crime mystery thing happening here. I loved that. I was not expecting that at all, but I really enjoyed that part of this manga, and that also adds to the tension because Albert ends up getting himself injured in these situations. I guess I didn't mention it, but this is also a BL manga. It's pretty slow burn, I would say, so that adds to the tension. But I thoroughly enjoyed this manga. I love how silly it was. I love the vampire angst. I love everything about it. It is way too slow of a release schedule for me, unfortunately. Volume 7, I don't think even has an English release date yet, which makes me sad, but I really had a great time with this manga. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, I would highly, highly recommend this. It was a great read. So that was everything I've read in the past few months. Well, everything I want to talk about. If you have any thoughts on anything that I discussed, please leave your comments down below. I'd love to hear from you. But that's going to be it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!